Hello traders, welcome to today's market update. My name is Nick and I'm going to be taking a look at the currency market with you, looking for some potential trade setups as well as interesting levels and overall zones that the market is kind of moving in. We're going to go ahead and jump into the first one today, which is going to be EURUSD. This is the most heavily traded currency pair. That's why I usually like to start these market updates with the biggest one, which is EURUSD. Looking here at the 4-hour chart, you can see euro dollar is making a move to the downside, but I think we need to grab the daily chart to really get a picture of what's going on. Now, if we draw the kind of channel that we've been talking about for quite some time here on these market updates, is you can see that overall we have been kind of in a channeling market to the downside here on euro dollar. Now, what you can see is price failed to make an attempt to head back up as we had potentially expected, right? We saw price come down into this area here and we were thinking, well, there's a good chance we probably want to see price come up to that area. But again, technicals don't always do us justice, right? Sometimes we have to adapt and sometimes we have to look for other opportunities. And that's exactly what we're seeing happening here on euro dollar, as price did try to make a move to the upside, but we ultimately failed and now are coming back for a retest of that structure. The question is, if we can get down here, will we see some sort of a bounce from there? I think that there's a good chance if euro dollar can trade its way down to that lower structure that we'll find some sort of buyer support there and continue kind of this channel pattern, right? So at some point as this market continues to get stretched to the downside, you can see if I kind of draw that trend line. I know it's by hand, so forgive my my art there. But if we do see a kind of rebound here, we might find temporary resistance at that level and continue up to ultimately kind of make its way back to that top of the channel, as price often does want to retest structure that it has recently left. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is the pound dollar. Very, very hot topic right now is the pound. You can see what happened yesterday is we did actually get a spike on the pound. Now, if I zoom in just a little bit, you can see we did get a pretty significant move to the upside. This is the first time in quite some time that the pound has seen some sort of bullishness. And if I bring it back down to the 4-hour chart, you can see now we are kind of seeing some bullish structure here on the pound. Now, overall, long term, the trend is still very, very strong to the downside. And what I actually want to point out to you guys today is take a look at this trend line that we are currently testing right now. If I kind of get long term about it, you can see all of this structure here, all of those rejections here, here, and here, they were very strong seller rejections to this current price level that we're currently seeing, right? We're seeing a trend line retest of that same kind of pattern that we've seen for a while. So as price came into that area, you can see we did get some sort of rejection right along that line, and now seeing price trade off of that trend line, I don't know, maybe what is that, 60 or so pips from that structure. So not bad at all. You know, from kind of a technical perspective, we are seeing a respect to that. But the question will be, excuse me, will we be able to jump across this breakout? And will we see some sort of continuation of this bullishness that we are seeing on the pound, or are we going to continue to break lower? One thing we want to see if we're sellers here on the pound is we want to see a break of this structure here, right? Buyer support along these levels here. We want to see that get broken if we're a seller, and a potential retest entry might be a beautiful way to trade the continuation of this long-term sell pressure on the pound. Being open to either direction there on the pound, because the pound is crazy right now with all the volatility going on. USDJPY continues to bounce against this level of resistance right here. This kind of ceiling for price has been in play for quite some time. And if we get our Fibonacci tool out, you can see it's right along that 38.2% retracement level. I think that there's not a big question here that this level is significant, but I think what will be a big question is, can we break that structure to continue this move to the upside, or are we going to break the wedge on the downside? Take a look at this, for example. You can see we are kind of forming a wedge formation as buyers continue to hold these structure lows and sellers hold this ceiling on price currently. Will we break to the upside or to the downside? I think that we have a trade set up either way, and let's get into why that is. If we break to the upside and we see some sort of retest, buyers will likely defend their level, right? They'll likely want to hold that structure, and so there might be some heavy buy pressure there where we could get a pretty high probability entry to the long side. On the contrary, if we do see a significant break of structure to the downside, and then we get some sort of retest, that same method applies to the sellers, as they would likely want to continue to hold their strength, right? So we want to see what happens here, and we can be adaptive and look for setups either direction with a calculated entry and a good risk to reward. Let's go ahead and move on to Brent crude oil today, guys, as this commodity has continued to climb over the last several days. Brent crude here finding kind of its legs here along this trend line here as buyer structure is there. But longer term, we do have some obstacles to get over, which is going to be this long-term trend line. WTI crude is going to look similar. However, take a look at the current trend line that we do see right here. We're currently testing this trend line right here, which is interesting. And if I bring it back down to the 4-hour chart, you can see that we do kind of have some sort of structure here along the way. Now, the question is, we have seen somewhat of a break of this structure. Are we going to continue lower? And if so, I think our first stop is going to be to test this recent structure low. I think that might be something to look out for. If price does decide to continue lower, good chance that it's going to head to this point. Might find some intraday trades to get us down to that level if we do see some momentum pick up there. Gold is our next one, guys. XAUUSD continuing to channel as we have talked about on the last couple market updates. We do see price kind of coming to a slow halt, right? You can see price finding buyer support down in this structure and kind of forming a channel now, as we had also mentioned last time, and still relevant, is the fact that we have kind of a left shoulder here, right? A head here, and a right shoulder here. What is that? It's a head and shoulders pattern, potentially. We want to see the next step play out, which is going to be a breakthrough of the neckline, right? That's the neckline, and a retest and a continuation. Like, this could be a great little trade setup to the short side along that direction. Let's go ahead and get on to the next one, which we're going to talk about Euro GBP. Now, if I get on the daily chart, we had talked about this in a market update. Take a look at what we are currently seeing. We had mentioned that price was likely going to come for some sort of reversal and to test this structure here. And you can see, look exactly where price headed. And look, we're even seeing a rejection at that, or a reaction at that price level, right? So just the power of technicals there as Euro GBP does come back into play. Might actually see some opportunities here. I have not looked at the Fibonacci's, but I think right around that 61.8, you can see we are currently trading in that area. Might be an interesting bounce level from here. You know, price is kind of pulling back sharply, but it's in the context of a very, very strong momentum push to the upside. GBP New Zealand is going to be our last one for the day, which is coming into kind of an interesting level. I want to point out, you can see that we did kind of come into contact with the 50% level, which lined up nicely with this pivotal zone right there. But currently we closed above and now back in that area again. So 50% level might not be the perfect entry, but you can see overall we do have something on the daily chart that I want to point out, which is this trend here, right? We did break significantly above this one, right? So we broke that structure and now we're seeing a momentum play, right? We're seeing continuation to the upside on pound New Zealand as the pound gains strength and the New Zealand loses strength relative to the pound. So we are seeing that continuation, but I think it's not out of the question that we get some sort of a pullback as price is looking a bit stretched to the upside. If we do get another pullback to kind of this lower zone here, this might be an interesting level. Now, it kind of already touched that area, but maybe a deeper retracement to something like this might give us a nice little entry to potentially join this momentum push to the upside. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you got something out of it, make sure you like the video down below and subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you on the next one.